Spidey has 8 years of experience on his belt when you start the game, and from the opening minutes, no time is wasted in making that apparent. You are immediately thrown into the action as you race to take down Kingpin in a thrilling infiltration of Fisk Tower, and it's the perfect to give us a feel for the traversal and the combat in the game. After that first mission, you're going to have to complete a few small tasks until you are given everything you need to fully Spider-Man PS4's open world. You will find yourself endlessly swinging through the city as you pass by both iconic NYC landmarks and buildings that you might recognize from the larger Marvel universe. I'm sure the number one question on though is how is the web swinging, and to put it simply, it is near perfect. What I really enjoyed about the traversal in the game is that it's not completely bare bones. It's complex, and if you want to be moving as fast as possible, there's definitely some mastery stringing different traversal options together alongside basic web swinging. There are times though where the momentum in your swing can be completely slowed down. It's hard to tell if this is a bug or something to do with the physics in the game, but where I found myself completely immersed while swinging through the city, I was ripped out of that immersion every now and then when one of my swings would just slow me down to a halt. When it comes to combat though in the game, I'd consider this to be the best combat showcase for Spider-Man that we've ever gotten in a Spidey game. As you begin to unlock and upgrade Spider-Man's gadgets and abilities, you'll notice that every single engagement in combat can be handled differently. Topping this with multiple different enemy types makes for very engaging fights where you must utilize Spidey's entire arsenal to come out on top. There is plenty to do in this city. As you progress through the story, you will begin to unlock a plethora of side activities that will definitely keep you busy for a long time, and it also helps that some, but not all of these activities aren't too tedious. You will then soon find out that through these various side objectives around the city, you will unlock tokens. These tokens can be spent to craft new gadgets for Spider-Man, upgrade said gadgets, as well as craft brand new costumes for Spidey. There are plenty of alternate costumes in the game that range from comic books, movies, and designs that are original, created specifically for this game. It's super important to note that none of the suits in the game are locked behind any sort of paywall. Every suit, even the ones that you get from pre-ordering the game, can be earned through leveling up and spending the correct tokens to craft this. I felt this was something to definitely commend Insomniac Games for, as there easily could have been some annoying microtransaction system in place here, and having the chance to actually be able to level up and earn these suits gives you a consistent goal to work towards as you play through the game, as there are definitely going to be some suits you will immediately want to complete the required objectives to unlock. And although I feel like it goes without saying, I should mention that this game looks beautiful. It is so damn good looking. The graphics are incredible. Beginning to end, it looks so damn good, and you seamlessly transition from gameplay to cutscene like it's nothing. Although there are certain moments in the game where you will find yourself at a loading screen, they fill those loading screens with these cool screenshots of whatever suit you're wearing, and it looks so awesome. There are going to be a million times in this game where you're going to hit that share button on your PlayStation controller so that you can save a screenshot from a certain moment in the game and use it as like a desktop background or tweet it out or something, because I'm telling you, this game looks so good. I know there's been a lot of controversy surrounding whether or not there's been a supposed downgrade to the game. Trust me, there isn't. Beginning to end, you're going to see how damn good this freaking game looks. Now, let's talk about the story of Spider-Man PS4. I'm not going to give you guys much info on what's going on in the story for the game, as there are plenty of videos on the channel of me detailing exactly that, but I did want to give you guys my overall thoughts on the story, and to get into that, the story is lengthy, and it's written extremely well. One of the things Insomniac Games wanted to emphasize was how important it was to tell a story from both the perspective of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. It's through this that you really care for side characters like Aunt May, Mary Jane Watson, and of course Miles Morales, and all these characters are interwoven perfectly into the story and aren't just thrown aside to get back into the Spidey action. But that said, the action set pieces are sensational. But what elevates them from being just cool action moments in the game to being key story moments that keep you invested are those down-to-earth parts of the game where we truly get a sense of what Peter Parker has to lose if you were to fail. Now, we all know, of course, that you get to play as Mary Jane, as she is a key character in the story, and to be honest, I found the parts where you got to play as MJ to be slightly repetitive. It seemed that I was doing the exact same thing every single time I got to play as her, and I appreciate her overall role in the story, and that she isn't just another damsel in distress, but I was hoping to play as Mary Jane in multiple different scenarios, rather than it always being stealth missions. Now, we also got a lot of villains in this game, and the villains are great. Seeing the Sinister Six was something any Spidey fan would be geeking out over, and one of my biggest worries when I got to try out the game at E3 was that the boss battles might be lackluster based on the fight I had with Shocker in that demo, but I was very wrong to worry about those boss battles, as the boss battles in Spider-Man PS4 are fantastic. It was also mentioned by, I believe, James Stevenson that the game will run you about 20 hours to complete, and that is roughly accurate, but if you throw in side missions, the side activities spread across the city, and of course the endless hours we're going to have free roaming, you'll come to find that you've played much longer than 20 hours. Overall, Spider-Man PS4 lives up to the hype. I had extremely high expectations for the game, and I am so happy to say that those expectations were met. While the game isn't perfect, and there are certainly some immersion-breaking bugs to fix, it is undeniably fun, and it's going to keep you entertained for many, many hours. I'm going to give Spider-Man PS4 a 9 out of 10. And that's that. I got a walkthrough coming later this week and tons of content planned for the game that I can't wait to share with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed my review. And of course, if you did enjoy, if you could leave a like rating on the video, it shows your support, and I would really appreciate it. I'm Caboose, and you can click on screen and make your way to one of the other videos on the channel, or you can click my logo to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a comment if you have an opinion, and subscribe if you're new. See you guys later.
Sorry, Herman. You brought this on yourself. Literally.
I went from a broken foot and being ranked 957 to winning the biggest tournament in the world.
These masks are so awesome. Where do you get them?
Oh, he's solid.
Cool, thanks. Do they have a website?
Yes.
Whoops. Hey, Yuri. I caught the bad guys, but...
But what?
You might want to bring a ladder.
You can't go past Spider-Man's best stories without a good duality. The awkwardness of Peter Parker versus the confidence of his alter ego, the relatable humanity of his adversaries versus their heinous deeds, and the age-old ditty about juggling power and responsibility. Insomniac's take on Spider-Man juggles dualism too, not just in its narrative themes, but in its mechanical execution. Intense boss fights are balanced with leisurely exploration. You'll make the most of Spidey's acrobatic abilities in the open world, but also the mundane abilities of his less superpowered allies in linear stages. Dualities usually suggest that there's a poorer trait, but they're often integral in characterizing the whole. That's Insomniac's Spider-Man in a nutshell. It's a fantastic experience that completely absorbs you into its unique slice of the Marvel Universe, and while that's partly defined by a slew of menial tasks, it becomes easy to forgive, because they're part of what helps complete the fantasy of becoming a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hey, Pete.
MJ? What are you doing here?
It's obvious to point out that a lot of the ideas in Marvel's Spider-Man have already appeared in a number of existing video game interpretations of the character, surely one of the pitfalls of revisiting something so perennially popular. But where Insomniac's version elevates itself, and where it makes an immediate impact, is in the slick presentation that neatly wraps major parts of the experience. It's obvious that the last decade of Marvel Cinematic Universe releases has had an effect here. The game's photorealistic slant shies away from any overt association to comic books. Bright, saturated colors and stirring orchestral hooks are ever present, and sweeping angles with camera effects majestically frame Spidey's signature combat style and acrobatics around the city, emphasizing them as the hyper-real feats they are. But it's the story that has benefited from Marvel's popular cinematic formula the most. Insomniac's interpretation spends a lot of time focusing on the human side of the tale, and Marvel's Spider-Man features some solid, understated performances. Peter Parker is a veteran Spidey, but still suitably dorky, and his relationships with the important people in his life have a major role to play. The game spends ample time dwelling on supporting characters, a move which aids later narrative developments in producing more effective impacts. Now, there's always an interesting dynamic with superhero stories, because you'll likely be able to accurately predict the fates of characters you're familiar with. But going along for that ride regardless, and watching with bated interest to see how things unfold this time around, is where the value lies. Marvel's Spider-Man takes inspiration from an amazing Spider-Man story penned by Dan Slott, who is credited as a writer here. Pete's elderly Aunt May works at a homeless shelter run by Martin Lee, an entrepreneur with a selfless heart of gold, but also a more negative side. Needless to say, things get complicated and worlds collide, but Insomniac takes multiple hard detours from the source material. Lee and other antagonists also benefit from a generous amount of time devoted to exploring their humanity, both through cutscenes as well as environmental storytelling. Marvel's Spider-Man features segments where you explore key locations as Peter Parker, observing spaces, finding audio logs, listening to Pete's self-narration, chatting with characters, and playing minigames passed off as scientific research. You'll also occasionally step into the shoes of other characters like Mary Jane, a journalist for the Daily Bugle in this timeline, as she dives into a more involved investigation using her own unique set of skills. Mary Jane's stages feature rudimentary stealth mechanics on top of regular exploration, and her clandestine skill set becomes more diverse as you continue to revisit her side of the story. These stealth mechanics aren't particularly demanding and you don't use them enough to wear out their welcome, but these supporting segments do feature some memorably tense scenarios and as a whole do help create a stronger attachment to characters. It's easy to find yourself feeling more involved.
Pete, you here?
Turning off Lex now. Are you okay?
We'll be in a few seconds.
All this narrative build-up pays off in a big way too, and when the game does reach its tipping point, it's shocking how devastating the events can feel, even if you can predict what's coming. Marvel's Spider-Man is very good at making its stakes feel sky high, evil actions genuinely villainous, and consequences actually upsetting. The story is emotionally charged and effective at spurring you into action. Later in the game, there's an urgency that builds up and succeeds in creating the superhero's dilemma of being pulled in multiple places at once, each option a dire situation, and the circumstances make you feel helpless despite your supernatural abilities. It's an incredible feeling, and the major beats of Spider-Man's story missions are certainly one of the game's highlights. The high bar set in the main plot shines a harsher light on the rest of the game's activities though. There are a number of side quests, most of which branch off the main story, but these don't have the same narrative energy as the main through line, which makes them much less compelling. There are also a number of optional activities, all ostensibly moderate tests of skill asking you to exercise your abilities in combat, traversal, or stealth. These challenges can be unique, but the dressing on them can also be uninspired, making them strange at best, like curing avian flu in pigeons, and menial at worst, like 3 different kinds of wave-based combat challenges. Look, I mean, dealing with trivial matters are all part of being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, of course, and randomly occurring crimes, as well as 2 different types of collectible hunting activities that encourage you to explore the city, are the activities that kind of best embody this idea, despite becoming repetitive. But when tasks like backing up computer data, or relieving the city's steam pipe pressure, or catching pigeons suddenly become Spidey's #1 life or death priority when there's some pretty serious stuff going on in the main story, it's hard not to be a little bewildered. The best incentive to complete these activities is tied to progression. Each type of activity offers its own unique tokens as a reward, which are used to purchase new suits, gadgets, and upgrades.
New suit, same old me.
Oddly, the most exciting activities are the ones plainly labeled as challenge missions. These ones ask you to push yourself in time trials to break a series of benchmark records for bonus tokens. Completing challenge missions are surprisingly the most motivating and rewarding of all the activities, even containing some special surprises. But the strangest part about the game's activities lies in the use of a trite open-world mechanic, and that's tower reveals. You begin the game with a blank world map, and it's necessary to make time to traverse through each of Manhattan's boroughs to find and reactivate a number of towers in order to uncover the map and pinpoint optional activities. There is some light narrative justification for this. Spidey needs to get access to local police radio for info on crimes, but it doesn't address the puzzling nature of a veteran Spider-Man not innately knowing how to get around New York City. However, for all the bewildering mundanity, the optional activities do provide some welcome relief and pacing from the more intense episodes of the main story. In fact, the game will at times give Spidey, and by extension you, dedicated time for breaks in between missions to clear your head with some silly low-stakes activities. And in the end, despite their obvious flaws, optional activities are undeniably irresistible to seek out and complete, purely because they act as a good enough reason to get out there and play with Spider-Man's sensational web-slinging mechanics. Swinging around New York as Spider-Man is endlessly fulfilling. It's a relatively straightforward system that isn't overly demanding on inputs, but the minor adjustments and variables in terrain you need to consider while in motion, since webs require tangible attach points, as well as the weighty feeling of Spidey makes the process feel satisfyingly manual. There's just enough effort required to make you feel as if it's all on you. It's the fluid animations, visual effects, and the controller rumble which all play a big part in selling the intensity, the speed, and the giddiness of flinging yourself through the air. Spidey transitions between different movement techniques seamlessly in most cases, and there's also a slowdown mechanic that assists in helping you make more accurate and graceful traversal decisions. Holding L2 will slow down time to a crawl and let you manually aim a zip to point maneuver, but also let you initiate surprise attacks on enemies or perform other tasks as well. Taking a photo of an iconic New York City monument to complete a challenge, mid-swing for example, and then going about your day, can give you a wonderful feeling of competency. Because it's such an involved task, swinging around is Spider-Man's greatest joy. Despite its simplicity, every move you connect feels like a small victory, and the pace is rhythmic enough that putting in the effort to move elegantly becomes an absorbing experience in itself. There's a similar gratification to be had from Spider-Man's combat. The Arkham Asylum-inspired crowd-fighting system suitably characterizes Spidey's acrobatic nature, and, like web-slinging, observing the enemies and environment to find your next best move makes it a satisfying puzzle. It only takes a few hits for Spidey to go down, so picking the right gadgets and powers for the job, using the right techniques for different kinds of enemies, being proactive and using your skills to manage overwhelming groups, and working to earn buffs and long combos by focusing on hitting your attacks and dodges with perfect timing keeps even relatively unchallenging encounters interesting. Combat-specific challenges also encourage you to mix up your technique, but it's the fluid transitions between attacks and the appearance of a natural flow that again sell the excitement. Spidey's flashy finishes and their over-the-top camera movements work to add some pizzazz in addition to being an excellent tool in their own right, though you'll see these animations countless times throughout the course of the game, and they do start to lose their impact. This is also true of the optional stealth mechanics, which, while effective, will often see you watching the same stealth takedown animations again and again if you choose to go down that path. What helps curb the monotony of combat later in the game are the story's boss battles. These fights are intensely chaotic affairs, featuring unique takedowns and bombastic set pieces. Though the solution to beating them doesn't take much to figure out, your opponents attack relentlessly, meaning you'll have to constantly stay on your toes, moving and dodging around while waiting for an opening, a dynamic which feels very true to the character, and goes a long way into making these moments memorable.
Sorry, Herman. You brought this on yourself. Literally.
Minor shortcomings don't detract from Insomniac's achievement in creating a game that feels like an authentic interpretation of a beloved creation. The feeling of embodying Spidey and using his abilities is astonishing, and the time spent on exploring its major characters help make its story feel heartfelt, despite superhero bombast. There have been open-world Spider-Man games before, but none so riveting and full of personality, none that explore and do justice to this many facets of the universe. Insomniac has created a superior Spider-Man experience that leaves a lasting impression, one that has you longing for just one more swing around New York City, even after the credits roll.
Nice entrance. Solid 8 out of 10. 9 out of 10.
Release him. He works with us.
Yuri, explanation, please?